Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the Beastmen against the Tomb Kings on the map Shagra's Stand. So, for my composition, I think it's fairly standard fare. I did decide to bring Morgur just because he's one of the best lore choices for the Beastmen. Nothing much to say there. Very tanky, even against fire damage, just because he has regen, he can stay alive for quite a bit. He does have Foe Seeker, of course, Call of Violence, and the two summons of Chaos Spawn, so very, very solid lord there. And alongside him, I did bring a Brave Shaman of the Wild on foot. He is coming in with Traderkin as well, with Devolve as well as Mantle of Gorok. So basically focusing on upgrading either my Minotaurs or destroying my opponent's squishy front line, depending on how my opponent kind of built his army. I also did bring a Jagged Dagger to improve my power reserves because I think it's a pretty easy to use and valuable little item to have. Behind that, in my front line here are three Bestigors, and the Bestigors are basically adequate. They'll outtrade anything that Tomb Kings put on the field, except maybe the Kepler Guard. I'm not entirely sure how that'll go, but obviously with that magical support, I'm figuring I can take on their front line. And they are backed by 2 units of Minotaurs, just to shut down an enemy large, as well as 2 Centaurs with throwing axes on one flank, and then 2 Centaurs with great weapons on the other. And these guys are basically, all of these big units are there to shut down my opponent's large constructs, which I anticipated he would bring en masse. Now for my opponent, he actually caught me a little bit by surprise here. He did bring Citra the Imperishable here on his horse. Not the most common choice to begin with. You usually say Arkan, though Citra is definitely no pushover, especially not on the horse. People don't realize he does have a bonus against large. He does have pretty good melee stats, actually 60 and 55, definitely higher than Morgur, for example. He does have Unyielding Will, which is a great little AoE buff. The Crown of Nakara, another AoE buff. Narrow's Incantation of Protection, so he did bring the cheaper spell, or one of the cheaper spells, just so he could get more procs of the heal, the Restless Dead, as well as use of Incantation of Desiccation, which is a great AoE debuff. He also does have Wrath of Tra for that knockback, though interestingly enough, no Blade of Tra, which is actually, in my opinion, a very useful item on Citra, just to keep him alive better. Unit of Acropolis Knights with Halberds does provide my opponent with an additional anti-large contingent, and his front line is really kind of a mix. We got Skeleton Spears on the flanks in case I decide to go cav on the flanks. Skeleton Swordsmen just to widen the line, and then Tomb Guard and the Kepler Guard kind of anchoring things in the center. And these guys, of course, will not beat the Bestigors, but they can kind of lock me in, force me to kind of get me trapped in a situation where he can easily encircle me with just how wide his front line is. He does have the Nekesh's Scorpion Legion in the back, and he does have 2 Skeleton Chariots, which interesting choice against Beastmen, but given that the Beastmen do have a lot of squishy infantry, these guys could definitely run rampant through them. I think they won't do that well against Bestigor just because neither their weapon strength nor their charge bonus is that good, but still, a threat to be reckoned with. And in the back, we do have the Hydro Titan, which of course is an absolute beast. Huge HP pool, huge armor, great melee stats that are really well rounded, unlike, say, the Giant, which is very min-maxed to damage. And of course, it does have a built-in Spirit Leech and Shem's Burning Gauge, and it does actually improve your Winds of Magic as well. So, almost immediately, I'm going aggressive, as is my opponent. He didn't bring any shooting, which is a little surprising. Usually you'll see some bowmen, whether skeleton bowmen or Shopti bowmen, intended to zone away the throwing axes and those sorts of annoying units. Because throwing axes are actually pretty potent threat. They do have that 32 damage over 32 AP damage. Most of that is AP. I do believe it's about 21 damage per shot. If we look here, 22 damage per shot. So you can see the Bestigors immediately plowing through. Morgur is being hit by a Spear Leech, but he doesn't really care. He does have that regen built in. The Skeleton Chariots do plow through, but they do actually take quite a beating from the Bestigors, who just do a lot of damage. And now we do plow through. We're prowling in, trying to take on the Tomb Guard and the Kepler Guard, which will all go fairly well, except my opponent is going to start collapsing on me from the flanks and pincering me. In the meantime, I'm not committing my cavalry just yet. I did try to push out with my Centaurs, but they did get pressured by the Chariots. We are going to pull back here, just picking away at them with our throwing axes. The ammo on these guys is not the greatest, though, so you definitely want to be a little cautious about spending it and squandering it. Over here, I'm going to commit the Minotaurs just to try to deal with these Chariots. They actually stopped there, but they should be committed fairly shortly. You can see the Brave Shaman of the Wild here holding these guys in place as the Minotaurs finally do dive in, and they're going to take these Chariots to pound down. I finally did get my Devolve off, and I was trying to get it off for a while. It was kept getting interrupted. I'm not entirely sure why, but it did finally kick off. You can see the Kepler Guard here getting annihilated, as are the Tomb Guard. But these guys are wavering. The morale on these Bestigors has been broken. They've been terrified by the Hydro Titan, so things are definitely not looking great for me. The balance of power is actually slightly in my favor, but I'm not entirely sure why that is, because really I'm having my Bestigors are routing. My front line is essentially gone, and at this point, it's basically my cavalry, my Minotaurs, and my heroes really anchoring things. Morgur cannot duel a Hydro Titan at all. He's definitely no match for that, though. He might last for a little while. Over here you can see the Necropolis Knights getting dragged into the muck by the Bray Shaman as well as the Minotaurs with great weapons. I did pop a Gorok's Mantle on these guys. They will do some immense work. Now you got to watch out for the Skeleton Spears, because they will do really well against Minotaurs, especially for their cost. But Necropolis Knights are being dragged into the muck. Despite an arrow's incantation of protection, they will not be long for this world. On the flank, my opponent is trying to pursue Bestigors off the field, which is a good move, but I do manage to catch him here with the Centaurs who are kind of idling on the flanks, and they are going to dive in and start dragging these Skeleton Chariots into the muck. And the Skeleton Chariots are not fast enough to outpace them. They are going to get slaughtered very easily, at least against the Centaurs. You can see they're falling there. They are trying to kind of run away, but it's really not going to happen. They're going to get run down, and these courageous Centaurs, they're just going to take them to pound down. Over here, the throwing axes are coming back. You can see Morgar's getting beaten, the snot beaten out of him. And Usef's incantation of desiccation there, nuking down my opponent's, or my personal unit stats, which is an absolute disaster for me. It means that Morgar suddenly becomes a super easy target, and my opponent, his Higher Titan, is able to take him to pound town. You can see he's almost dead. He's under half health, and of course the Higher Titan hits him for well over 500 damage. Morgar has almost no armor, and he of course has that fire vulnerability. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, the Necropolis Knights are getting slaughtered, which means he's basically lost, as are the Skeleton Chariots. So his mobile element is going to be annihilated here in the pits, slaying out with the Minotaurs as well as the Bestigors. You can see over here, I do use my Chaos Spawn summons to lock my opponent's Tomb Guard out of position to keep his Takeshi's Scorpion Legion back, to buy myself some time to rally my troops as another Devolve goes down and melts these troops a little further. Over here, though, my opponent does get a lovely summon of a Shopti, and this was actually really annoying. The Centaurs with throwing axes, I kind of tried to micro them away, or when I saw the summon coming in, but they actually kind of get caught up here, and they are taking immense and excessive damage from these Shopti. It's actually pretty ridiculous. I'm going to lose about, I do believe about 40, or about, sorry, not 40, about 15 models on these guys as they try to push out. And this was definitely a huge error on my part, and perhaps just a major annoyance with pathfinding, really. They got stuck up on those Shopti, who really don't have the tightest formation, and I'm going to lose 15 or so Centaurs, maybe more. Over here, though, the Bray Shaman of the Wild is kind of keeping things together. You can see the Bestigors have dove into the back into the fray to beat down this Tomb Guard. You can see the Minotaurs are going to go back. I'm trying to get charges off so that I can hopefully tank the morale of these undead troops, make them collapse a little faster. You can see the balance of power is out of my favor, but that has a lot to do with the fact that my summons have disappeared, whereas my opponent's Ushapti summon has just gone down. So once that Ushapti summon goes away, I should be in a better position. Over here you can see Bestigors actually route Skeleton Warriors. Just because of that fear, and because these guys weren't in the best of morale positions before, they're going to route. Fortunately, the Centaurs are on point, and they're going to dive in and teach these Skeleton Warriors a lesson. They're going to charge in, and they were going to basically just annihilate this unit, mop them up, hopefully. Over here, I did pull my Minotaurs clear, and now it's very important for me. At this point, I'm just pulling my troops as far away from my opponent as possible, letting my opponent's troops crumble. You can see Skeleton Warriors are negative 30. I'm not entirely sure why. In the replay, it shows them as having morale, but you can see they're very low, and at this point, I'm just pulling away. I'm letting the Ushapti die. I'm letting the Skeleton Warriors die, and my opponent was not pleased about this sort of kiting. He was very very angry about it in the chat, but honestly, when you have a mobility advantage like this, with the Beastmen here against these guys, against the Tomb Kings, it's often a very good idea to simply pull back, take a moment, regroup, rethink your strategy, think about what you're going to do. And obviously, I'm not drawing up new lines of strategy here or new attack lines, but I'm just stretching my opponent's troops. My opponent gets a little greedy here, pulls Citra out, probably thinking that Citra has an anti-large bonus and decent stats, so he can go toe-to-toe with a lot of angry Minotaurs, but that is not the case. And Citra is going to get beaten down here. As the Centaurs dive in, they're going to be able to slow him down, they're going to be able to prevent him from escaping, and the Minotaurs are going to take him to Pound Town. Over here, those Shopti are trying to push in, but at this point, they're basically dead. I am being very careful with the ammo and my Centaurs. That is really the key here to winning this fight. I need to get something to take that Higher Titan offline, and I'm no longer have the confidence that my Minotaurs will be able to do it because they're so low. But I'm deciding to commit back into the fray. I'm going to try to shut down these Skeleton Warriors, shut down these Tomb Guard. I'm not able to pursue Cetra. A little bit of an overextension here. I should have just pulled the Minotaurs away, and I'm going to lose some Minotaurs and take some nasty damage here, basically purely thanks to greed. The Bestigors also do dive in, and unfortunately this was once again a big mistake on my part. I committed them too soon, and they are going to get terror-outed, especially with that rear charge from Cetra. Fortunately for me, though, I got massive value there against Cetra. I took him down by most of his HP because the Minotaurs are just so potent. And his army is not really able to catch me. Cetra can catch me, but as he just learned, to his great sadness, is that he will get clobbered horribly by the Minotaurs. And the rest of his army is very slow, and they're going to struggle to support him. So I can kind of kite. That is my intent here. I do throw my Centaurs here in against Cetra once again. And the Beastmen have very powerful stats on the charge. And you can see Cetra loses a whole bunch of HP, about 400 HP in the space of seconds against the Centaurs. I don't even think Morgar got hit there, and we are just pulling away. And my opponent, once again, was very angry about this. And I can kind of understand. He's being kited out, but that's what happens when you don't have any shooting, when you don't have any mobility of your own, when you didn't bring any tools to really do that. And so I'm kind of watching out, trying not to get caught by the Tomb Guard, keeping my Centaurs back, and just picking away at the higher Titan here. Not really focusing on Cetra because he is a small target, but shortly I will try to snipe away at him a little bit. You can see already the King of Kesh's Legion does get caught by the Bestigors. And I do make a bit of like a full-on commitment here. I throw in thinking that perhaps with Cetra solo I can snipe Cetra, and I can just overwhelm the higher Titan with the Minotaurs, beat him down, and that'll be that. Because these Tomb Guard are very low, and of course the King of Kesh's Legion is pretty. This is the only thing really here doing well as that and the higher Titan. But unfortunately for me, my opponent gets a lovely Neru's Incantation of Desiccation here, or protection, which helps the higher Titan tank out against the Minotaurs. I do try to keep their morale up, but you can see the Bestigors here are going to rout, and once all these infantry units start coming into the fray, I'm going to be in deep trouble, and the Minotaurs are simply going to be forced to rout off. And you can see they're very low in morale, they're very low in leadership. The first unit routes down to 4 models. Second unit is not going to last much longer. They're down to 5 models, but very low on HP, and they're simply going to rout as well. Morgar actually gets caught up here, which is a really bad situation for me. I do try to hit Cetra here with some throwing axes, but you can see the throwing axes have rather poor accuracy. Cetra does drop a whole bunch, and he is going to be really low on HP here, but nonetheless, he does stay alive, and my line has essentially buckled. My Minotaurs are simply fleeing off the field. They're not really going to be able to make a comeback. It only really leaves these Centaurs, Morgar, and the 2 Centaurs with throwing axes. So things are definitely right down to the wire, and this is really where the kiting game begins, because you can see we still have 2 minutes left on the clock. And things are definitely desperate. I do try to goon Cetra out here, but I really don't want to lose these Centaurs. I really don't feel like I can afford it at this stage. Even if I did manage to goon out Cetra, he still has this very healthy unit of King Nakesh's Scorpion Legion, which could probably take on all of my cavalry here at once if they don't fall apart. I'm trying to just snipe Cetra here with the throwing axes. And you can see a lot of projectiles there missing. He drops to 7 HP, so right on the cusp of death, but not quite. Like I said, my opponent was not happy about this. You can see he's trying to juke around. He does actually get a heal off with Neru's Incantation of Protection, but the heal here only lasts for 7 seconds, so he's not going to get much HP back. But you can see he's just on the verge of crumbling, but not quite. 45 HP, and that is really kind of anchoring his line. If I manage to kill him, the Tomb Guard will start going down, and I'll be able to kind of pincer my opponent's troops and cause a collapse. So I do give up on trying to assassinate him with the Centaurs. I do force him to pull away here by coming close, and I just start throwing axes at the higher Titan, figuring that I'll use the Centaurs in a do-or-die mission, just a desperate last-ditch effort here, and I do manage to assassinate Cetra, and that foul Tomb King does topple here to an ignominious end. I do lose a few Centaurs to the Nakesh's Scorpion Legion, but more than worth it, or maybe just 1 Centaur even. The other, never mind, the other guy doesn't get caught there. Morgar is just hovering on the periphery, and I'm using my throwing axes to chip away at the higher Titan, dropping it by quite a few hundred HP with every volley. And obviously this is very frustrating for my opponent, who's not able to force a fight. I'm just dictating the pace of battle, and this is really why a mobile force can be very potent. And this is definitely one of the big Beastmen advantages. You can outpace all your opponent's infantry. You can kite, and with these sorts of fast movers, you can kite often their cavalry and those sorts of troops. So things are definitely kind of shifting in my favor. You can see the balance bar is very much in my favor. I'm focusing down the higher Titan, which is a very slow target, so even the inaccurate throwing axes are able to hit it. And it's down to 1600 HP. It's crumbling. Another volley of throwing axes is going in, and actually I'm not even going to expend all of my ammo here just yet. We do pull away. Higher Titan, I do believe, gets a little swipe here, tries to get a swipe here on Morgar. I do pull away there. Centaur is just pulling close, but staying just shy of an actual engagement. And now the Higher Titan does take a final volley and breaks, and that's going to be the end of my opponent's troops. You can see the Tomb Guards start crumbling, and the King Nakesh's Scorpion Legion is going to disintegrate shortly thereafter. So, definitely a very tight, bitter battle. Definitely one of my opponent's big mistakes was committing Cetra. Had he not committed Cetra to that attempted fight with the Minotaurs, things could have gone better for him. I think he definitely underestimated the mobility of the Minotaurs and the mobility of the Centaurs. I think never underestimate your opponent's mobility, no matter who you are. Sometimes you don't even find that dwarves can catch you faster than you'd expect, but especially with a faction like Beastmen or Wood Elves or whatever, these fast-moving factions, you need to be on your toes. You can't afford to let your units get isolated like that. And I think that my opponent really paid for it. He lost probably about 3,000 HP on Cetra in just an unfortunate engagement there. As for the forces and performance, a huge problem for me was simply lack of width on the front line. And I'm not entirely sure how I would change that or how I'd improve that situation, because all of my supporting units were really valuable, and it's rather difficult to it's rather difficult to find units that I'd extend my front line with. Trying to cram 2 additional units of Ungor spears would probably be an ideal way to do so, but what I dropped to make them fit would be a serious problem. Perhaps spacing my Bestigors out more would have also been a good idea. That way I would have been able to catch more of my opponent's front line. I kind of committed them to the fight against the powerful Tomb Guard and Kepler Guard in the center. And had I not done that, I could have perhaps caught the Skeleton Warriors out on the flanks of Skeleton Spears and kept my opponent back a little better. The Centaurs did a great job shutting down the Chariots and just pounding my opponent's backlines and flanking and circling him. The Centaurs with throwing axes obviously don't look that great on paper. 7 and 6 kills is nothing to brag about, but they did manage to chip away at the Chariots. They basically single-handedly took down the Hydro Titan, and they also chipped away at Cetra to the point that he basically fell apart. So definitely they did some great work, and they're definitely a very potent unit. Finally, the Minotaurs with great weapons are a great option, and they obviously helped pound down those Chariots. They beat down the Necropolis Knights with halberds, and they even did some damage to the Hydro Titan, and they actually beat down the infantry pretty bad as well. So they definitely did a great job. I'm not entirely sure if I should have done great weapons or sword or axe and board. Silver shields can be useful if your opponent brings a lot of skeleton archers. Otherwise, the Brave Shaman unfortunately got caught and dead. Morger did a great job as well, just anchoring things and outpacing my opponent when he tried to get close. For my opponent's build, I don't think it's bad, but I would probably drop some of these units in favor. You don't necessarily, against Beastmen, you don't really need armor-piercing anti-large, so I think Necropolis Knights aren't really worthwhile. I think you'd be better off bringing a handful of our skeleton archers, or Ushabti Great Bows, and say another unit of skeleton spears, something like that. Nekesh's Scorpion Legion and skeleton spearmen are more than adequate to deal with any large the Beastmen put on the field. You can beat Centaurs with them, you can beat Minotaurs with them. The Gorbals could cause you trouble, but you do have Cetra at that point. And one or two Gorbals isn't going to make the difference. Plus, Gorbals aren't a very and plus a Gorbal can't really take on a higher Titan, so you really don't need this AP, in my opinion, the anti-large AP. Otherwise, I think this is a pretty solid build. I definitely think that Necropolis Knights being traded out for, say, 3 Skeleton Archers, or the Legion of Demonetization and an Archer, and something like that. Any sort of combination like that would have been a huge boon for my opponent. Definitely something he unfortunately did not have there. Otherwise, great build. I think a pretty good strat. Definitely took me right down to the very edge of the defeat, and I only barely managed to cling on by the skin of my teeth. So great game to Psychedelic. I do know that it was a little bit frustrating to fight against that late game kite and all that, but nonetheless, great game. And I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, anything like that, be sure to share them down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.